No one noticed the boy the first time he slipped inside the zoo. It was just past midnight, the hour when even security guards grew careless and the streets outside turned silent. The winter wind pressed against the fences, rattling chains and stirring leaves, but otherwise, the place was still. And the boy was small, thin, quick. He climbed the back wall near the maintenance shed, using a gap in the old bricks that had been there for years. Then he dropped silently onto the gravel path behind the elephant enclosure and disappeared into the shadows. He wore a too-big hoodie, torn jeans, and shoes with the soles peeling off. A flashlight dangled from his wrist by a shoelace. He didn't turn it on. He didn't need to. He knew where he was going. This wasn't his first time. The zoo at night was nothing like the one people saw during the day. There were no crowds, no shouting children, no snack wrappers or camera flashes, just breathing, slow, deep, rhythmic, the kind that came from sleeping animals, shifting in their nests or enclosures, dreaming their wild dreams. And somewhere near the far end of the grounds, past the monkey house, past the reptile dome, beyond the cracked concrete statue of a giraffe, was the tiger enclosure. The sign said,
Danger.
"Do not approach. Animal is unpredictable." But the boy didn't stop. He walked straight to the outer wall, then to the side service gate where the keepers sometimes brought food. It wasn't locked. Not really. Just latched and rusted. He slipped inside. The enclosure was vast. A mix of fake rocks and real dirt, with tall grass in patches and a single low cave built into the far end. Trees lined the back wall, separating it from the fence. The boy didn't make a sound. He just walked across the yard, slow, deliberate, and sat down cross-legged in the dirt near the cave's edge. He waited, and the tiger came. She moved like fog, silent, heavy, powerful, orange and black with a streak of white along one cheek. Her left eye was clouded, and she limped slightly as she walked. She was old, worn, but when she stepped into the moonlight, she looked like something out of a story, a queen fallen from a forgotten kingdom. The boy didn't flinch. The tiger stopped a few feet away. Then, just like every night, she lay down beside him, and the boy began to talk. He didn't talk loud, and he never touched her. He just told her things, quiet, broken things, about his mom who worked nights and barely came home, about school where no one listened, about the man who used to live in their house but didn't anymore, about how he didn't cry at the funeral even though everyone else did, about how no one had ever listened like she did. "You're the only one," he whispered. The tiger breathed slow and deep. She never growled, never hissed, never turned away. She just listened. Every night. No one at the zoo knew. Not at first. But then someone started noticing changes. The tiger, her name was Raya, had been labeled unmanageable after an incident 5 years earlier. She'd been rescued from a failed private zoo overseas, barely surviving the flight. When she arrived, she refused food, growled at keepers, attacked her enclosure walls. She'd clawed open her own paw once trying to dig beneath the fence. The vet said she wouldn't last. The staff agreed to give her space. Minimal contact, no visitors, no direct interaction. And yet, now she was eating, purring softly in the early mornings, resting near the outer walls like she was waiting for something. And when the keepers entered, she didn't lunge. She watched, calm, focused, changed. It was Maria, the head keeper, who figured it out. She came in early one morning to do her rounds and found strange footprints near the feeding gate. Small, not animal, not staff. She checked the camera feed. First, there was nothing. Then she rewound to 2:14 a.m. A shadow, human, small, slipping through the gate. She nearly dropped her tablet. She called security. They checked the locks. The boy had never triggered the sensors. He avoided the main gates, the tripwires, the motion lights. He didn't even leave trash behind. Just footprints. And the tiger? She followed him with her eyes like he was something sacred. Maria didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, the next night, she waited. She sat behind the rock wall, hidden, wrapped in a blanket. 2:07 a.m. She saw him. Same clothes, Same walk. Straight through the grass, quiet as a ghost. She watched as he sat down. And when Raya came to him, laid down beside him like a mother beside her cub, Maria felt tears rising in her eyes. She waited, listened. He was telling her a story. Something about a memory, a park, a swing, a dog he used to have. He said the dog had been scared of thunder and would always crawl under the bed. Said he missed that dog more than anything. I think you miss someone too, he said. That's why we're the same. Maria's breath caught. She stood up slowly. The boy turned, startled. His eyes wide, scared. He jumped to his feet. Wait, she said gently. I'm not mad. The boy froze. She doesn't let anyone get close, Maria whispered. But she lets you. The boy didn't speak. He looked down at the tiger. Raya looked up at Maria, then back to him, and licked his hand. Maria didn't call security. She didn't raise her voice. She just stepped back and sat down on the edge of the rock, arms resting loosely on her knees, watching the boy with the kind of stillness only animals usually trusted. The boy looked ready to bolt, but Raya didn't move. She gave a soft exhale through her nose. Not a growl, not a warning, more like reassurance. She blinked, slow and heavy, then nudged the boy's hand once more, and the boy stayed. He turned slightly toward Maria, cautious, his voice barely audible. Are you gonna report me? Maria shook her head. No. Not tonight. The boy swallowed hard. I didn't break anything. I know. She lets me come. I can see that. The boy hesitated. She doesn't like other people. Maria nodded slowly. That's true. There was a silence then, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick, layered, like the space between them had been holding a story, and neither of them wanted to break it too quickly. Finally, Maria asked, What's your name? Jamie, he said. Jamie Reyes. She smiled. I'm Maya. Jamie gave a nervous little nod. You work here? Yeah. Head keeper. Oh, Maria smiled again. She's never done that before. Jamie looked at her. What? Let someone in? Not since. Not ever, really. Jamie turned back to the tiger. She's not mean. Maria's voice softened. No. She's not. She just remembers. Maria blinked. The words landed heavy. Jamie didn't explain them, but he didn't need to. Maria had seen that look in Raya's eyes every day for 5 years. A look not of wild aggression, but something deeper. Wounded recognition. The kind of pain that didn't scream, it waited. I think she remembers someone she lost, Jamie said. Maria didn't reply, because the truth was, so did she. They didn't stay much longer that night. Maria walked Jamie to the outer gate and watched as he disappeared down the back path, slipping through the gap in the wall like he'd done 100 times. She didn't follow, didn't report it. She needed time to understand. The next morning, she reviewed every log they had. Footage, feeding records, behavior charts. There it was, clear as day. From the week Jamie started sneaking in, Raya's aggression dropped. Her sleep patterns improved. Her appetite stabilized. She hadn't just tolerated the boy. She had changed. The zoo board found out a week later. Not because of Maria, but because a new security intern caught the same footage on the internal camera and flagged it. Emergency meeting. Angry voices. Legal concerns. Do you know how dangerous that is? What if the kid got hurt? She's a predator, not a pet. Maria didn't argue. She just showed them the footage. The boy sitting beside Raya, her resting her head near his foot. The silence, the stillness, the listening. The board chair, a tall man with tired eyes and a tie too tight, rubbed his temples. We need to find the boy. Maria spoke softly. I already did. Heads turned. You knew? One of them snapped. I watched it happen. You allowed an unauthorized minor. I listened. Maria cut in. For once, I didn't talk, or file reports, or panic. I just watched what he gave her. And what's that? Someone asked bitterly. Maria paused, then said, Peace. They didn't shut things down, not yet. They asked for the boy's name, address, school. Maria gave only what she knew. She promised she'd handle it personally. No police, no press, just time. That evening, she waited near the back wall. And just past midnight, Jamie came. He froze when he saw her again, but she waved him over. "Got something for you," she said, pulling a small thermos from her bag. "Hot cocoa, with marshmallows." Jamie took it without speaking. He sat on the rock. She sat beside him. "You work late a lot," he murmured.
Ido.
Jamie glanced toward the enclosure. "She was already awake," he said quietly. "I think she knew I was coming." Maria smiled. "She always does." Over the next few nights, they fell into a rhythm. Jamie came. Maria waited. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes not. Sometimes Jamie would tell Raya stories. About the neighbor's cat. About the kid at school who threw his lunch. About the photo of his mom he kept folded in his shoe. Other times he just sat. Maria learned more in those silences than she had in years of vet notes. Jamie's mother worked nights as a cleaner. His father had been gone for 2 years. Not dead, Jamie clarified once. Just missing on purpose. He lived mostly alone. No friends.
No siblings.
But he didn't feel sorry for himself. He said Raya didn't need pity either. She just needs someone who stays. Maria's throat tightened. One night, a storm rolled in. Heavy rain. Thunder like mountains falling. Maria almost didn't come. But Jamie did. He stood soaked in front of the enclosure, hood plastered to his head, sneakers squelching. And Raya came out. She hated storms. Always had. She used to claw the walls during thunder. But this time, she walked straight to Jamie and lay beside him, water dripping off her fur, eyes closed. Maria stood under the keeper's awning and watched, hands clenched. And that's when she made the decision. The next morning, Maria submitted a proposal to the board. It was simple. Let Jamie visit Raya supervised, safe, scheduled. Not a publicity stunt. Not for tours. Just for her. For them. The board balked. But then she showed them the stats. Aggression level. Down 89%. Appetite. Steady. Social tolerance. Increasing. One of the senior vets added quietly, "It's like she found her cub." That got their attention. 2 days later, the board approved a private supervised visit pilot program. Jamie didn't sneak in that night. He came through the front gate. For the first time, someone was waiting for him. Jamie's first official visit to Raya's enclosure didn't feel official at all. He still wore the same hoodie, still walked with his shoulders hunched slightly forward like he expected someone to stop him. But this time, no one did. The gate opened for him, and Maria was the one holding it. A new logbook was clipped to her side. The word observation was written in big red marker across the front. Someone from administration had insisted. Maria didn't care. She smiled at Jamie and said, "She's been waiting all day." Jamie didn't reply, but there was a flicker of something behind his eyes. Not excitement, not pride. Something quieter. Relief. He walked across the enclosure with the same quiet confidence he always had. His steps careful. His eyes already on the cave's shadow where Raya usually rested. She was there, stretched out in the grass just outside the den, her head up the moment she saw him.
No groll. No tensión.
Just that low, slow chuffing sound Maria had only ever read about in textbooks. It meant trust. It meant welcome. It meant, in a language older than words, "You are mine and I know you." Jamie didn't speak either. He just sat cross-legged, closer this time, only a few feet from her. Maria stayed back, watching from the other side of the gate, not interfering. Jamie reached into his backpack and pulled out something wrapped in a soft towel. A sketchbook. He began to draw. Not talking, not fidgeting, just sketching. Raya lay perfectly still, her breathing slow and deep, the tip of her tail flicking once every few minutes. The sky was clear, a warm breeze moving through the grass, and for a moment, the zoo disappeared. The fences vanished. The city beyond the walls went silent, and there was only this. A boy and a tiger and something invisible and sacred between them. After an hour, Maria called gently from the gate. 5 more minutes. Jamie nodded but didn't speak. Before he left, he stood up and looked down at the tiger. See you tomorrow? He whispered. Raya blinked slowly, then rested her head on her paws. Jamie turned and walked out. The sketchbook stayed tucked under his arm. Maria didn't ask to see it. She didn't have to. That night, someone posted a photo on social media. It wasn't from inside the enclosure, that would have been a breach. It was from a nearby staff observation tower. The caption read, "Tiger Whisperer. Raya's finally found her peace." The photo showed Jamie, silhouetted by the sun, sitting beside the tiger like they were made of the same moment. It went viral by morning. By noon, the zoo's inbox was flooded. News outlets called. Animal behavior forums lit up. Is this safe? Some asked. Why is a child being allowed in with a predator? Others demanded. But just as many were amazed. This is the most beautiful thing I've seen all year. Animals know. That boy has a gift. Jamie didn't know any of this. He didn't have a phone. No internet. He only found out something was different when he arrived the next day and saw a group of people standing outside the gate. Cameras, phones, whispers. One even tried to call out to him. He froze. Maria stepped between them and walked him in quickly, voice tight.
I'm sorry.
Someone leaked the photo. It's gotten out of hand. Jamie didn't say anything. He looked toward Raya, who was pacing slowly now, unsettled by the extra noise. Can we cancel? He asked softly. Maria hesitated. We can go inside. Just us. I'll make sure no one else comes. That visit was quieter. More tense. Raya didn't settle right away. Jamie didn't sit as close. But eventually they found the stillness again, even if it came slower. Maria watched them both. One older than her kind should be, the other younger than he deserved to feel. They had been pulled into something larger than they asked for. And yet neither walked away. That evening, the zoo director called a meeting. The board was nervous. Sponsors were calling. The media was offering money for interviews. We need to manage this story, the PR manager said. Control the narrative. What's the narrative? Maria asked, arms crossed. That a broken animal found a broken boy, someone said. And together they're whole? Someone else added, half joking. People don't believe that kind of story anymore, a board member muttered. They will, Maria said, if we don't ruin it. She left the meeting early and walked to the research building. She had a password to the behavior database, every file the zoo had on every animal. Raya's file was long. Medical notes, aggression reports, feeding charts. But deep in the scanned archive, Maria found something strange. A handwritten note from the vet who first received her overseas. It mentioned a number tattooed faintly on her inner thigh. Looks like an old ID mark. Not standard. Possibly from circus or private trade. The code was 5 digits. Maria copied it down. Something itched at the back of her mind. That night, she called in a favor from a friend at an international wildlife registry. Took 2 days to get a reply. When it came, Maria read it 3 times. The ID matched a tiger rescued in Eastern Europe, seized from a traveling circus. The animal had been heavily sedated and found chained in a trailer, alongside one other tiger. A male, unnamed, died during transport. Maria's stomach turned. She clicked on the next document. Photos, shipping logs, a vet's assessment, and finally, a name scribbled in pen across a form.
Raya, Surfifet.
She had been through hell, and worse. She had lost the only other tiger who had shared her suffering. And now she was here, in a cage, alone again, until Jamie. Maria printed everything out and placed it in a folder. She didn't know if Jamie would understand it all, but she needed him to have it. She needed him to see that Raya's silence wasn't emptiness. It was survival. When Jamie came the next day, she handed him the folder. Read it when you're ready, she said. He didn't open it right away. He spent his visit in silence, sitting beside Raya as always, his hand resting on his knee, just inches from her paw. She didn't move, but her eyes stayed on him. And when the visit ended, and Jamie walked back to the gate. He whispered, almost to himself, "I know what it's like, to lose the only one who saw you." He clutched the folder against his chest. It only took one headline to change everything. Boy and Beast. The unbelievable bond between a child and a killer tiger is spread like wildfire. The story was picked up by national news, then international media. Morning shows asked for interviews. Animal rights groups weighed in. Some called it beautiful. Others called it reckless. "What are we teaching our children?" one commentator said on air. "That predators can be pets?" Maria nearly threw her coffee at the screen. But what frustrated her more than anything was how they kept getting it wrong. Raya wasn't tame. Jamie wasn't fearless. What they shared had nothing to do with ownership or control. It was something gentler, older, quieter. But no one wanted quiet anymore. When Jamie arrived at the zoo that week, there were barricades outside the main gate. Reporters, tourists, people holding signs. A few supportive, most critical. "Don't let the boy near the beast," one read. "Free Raya," said another. Jamie kept his hood up and his eyes low. Maria met him at the staff entrance and walked him through the back corridor. He didn't say anything until they reached the gate. "I don't want to be famous," he said quietly. Maria crouched next to him. "You're not," she said. "You're just visible now." He didn't reply, but the way he looked at the enclosure told her everything. It didn't feel like sanctuary anymore. Felt like stage. Raya was restless, pacing, her tail twitching in sharp, irregular arcs. She sensed the tension. Maria knew animals didn't understand politics or media, but they understood energy. They absorbed emotion like sound. Raya's enclosure, once quiet, had become a chamber of echoes. Cameras clicked from behind the trees. Even with restricted access, people found ways to peer in. Drones buzzed overhead. Security had to install netting to keep them out. Jamie sat down in his usual spot, but Raya didn't settle. She walked the perimeter, pausing now and then to look at him, then kept moving. Jamie didn't speak. He didn't try to stop her. He just waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, he stood and backed away. "She doesn't want me here today," he said. Maria felt something clench in her chest. "It's not you," she said. "It's all of this." Jamie didn't argue. He just nodded. The next day, he didn't come. Maria tried to hold the schedule together, but something had shifted. Raya's behavior regressed. She stopped eating again, slept less, began clawing at the base of her enclosure. Not violently, just repetitively. A slow, digging motion, over and over, like she was trying to unearth something that had been buried too long. The vet adjusted her diet. The behaviorist suggested enrichment games. Maria said nothing. She knew what was missing. Jamie stayed away for a week. Maria didn't push. She figured he needed time. But when she finally saw him again, it wasn't at the gate. It was in the back garden behind the staff wing, sitting alone on a stone bench. He looked tired, smaller, like the silence had caught up to him. "I read the file," he said without looking up. Maria sat beside him. "The part about the other tiger, her brother?" Maria nodded slowly. "We think it was her mate, or sibling, maybe both. They were together for years before the rescue. Then he died in transport. She's been alone ever since." Jamie pulled his hood tighter. "She was never angry," he said. "She was just alone." Maria waited. "I think I made it worse." "No," she said gently. "You made it bearable." He turned to her for the first time. His eyes were red, but dry. "Can I go back in?" She hesitated. "It's risky. There are people watching. People who want to shut it all down." "Then let them watch," Jamie said. "Let them see what it actually is." Maria arranged a special visit. 1 hour. No media. Just her, Jamie, and a single wildlife photographer she trusted. Someone who knew how to disappear behind a lens. It wasn't a stunt. It was documentation. Jamie entered the enclosure in silence. Raya was already out, waiting in the grass.
No passing. No growling.
Just stillness. Jamie walked slowly toward her. She stood. They met in the middle, and she leaned her head into his chest. Not a lunge. Not a show. A moment. She closed her eyes. He closed his arms around her massive skull. Not squeezing, just resting. Maria wiped a tear from her face. The photographer took 3 shots, then stopped. The photos were never released. They were given to Jamie. He put them in a shoebox under his bed, alongside the one picture he had left of his dad. He still didn't talk about him. But one day, sitting on the bench beside Raya's enclosure, he told Maria something he never had before. "My dad left after hitting me." Maria froze. Jamie kept his eyes on the tiger. "I was 7. He'd yell. Then he'd get quiet. And when he was quiet, it was worse." Maria felt her hands curl into fists. Jamie continued, voice low. "One time I hid in the basement with my dog. He was a mutt, scruffy, brown. He used to sit in front of me like a wall." He smiled faintly. "He growled at my dad once. Just once. Then he was gone." Maria didn't ask what happened. She didn't have to. Jamie reached into his backpack and pulled out his sketchbook. He flipped to a new page. He started to draw. This time it wasn't Raya. It was the dog and a tiger, sitting side by side. The letter arrived on a Thursday, folded neatly into an envelope stamped with the zoo's official seal. Maria found it in her staff mailbox, but it wasn't addressed to her. It was addressed to Jamie. She didn't open it. She took it home, held on to it for 2 days, and finally handed it to him on a bench behind the aviary where they sometimes met on the quieter days. He didn't look surprised, just tired. He opened it slowly, like he already knew what it would say. Inside was a printed notice from the board. Due to ongoing media attention and concerns raised by external safety advisors, the Special Access Program allowing direct contact between subject R01, Raya, and minor visitor, Jamie Reyes, will be suspended pending further review. This is not a permanent termination, but a precautionary measure until legal liability and insurance evaluations are complete. Jamie didn't say a word. He folded the letter once, carefully, then tucked it into his sketchbook and stared down at the gravel under his shoes. Maria sat beside him. "I fought it," she said, "but there's pressure from above. City officials, sponsors." Jamie nodded once. "It's okay." "It's not." "It is," he said, but his voice cracked on the last word. Maria looked over at him, but he didn't lift his head. He just sat there, breathing slowly, like if he was quiet enough he wouldn't fall apart. That night, Maria walked the zoo after hours. Security had doubled patrols since the story broke. Drones were grounded. News vans circled the block. Someone had tried to climb the outer fence the week before, supposedly to free the tiger. The staff was on edge. But the animals felt it worst. Raya hadn't eaten in 2 days. She paced the fence every morning, then curled up by the side gate where Jamie used to enter. She would lie there for hours, head up, ears turned to the wind like she was listening for something she couldn't hear anymore. Maria stayed with her late. She sat in the grass on the other side of the bars and told her stories about the first time she arrived, about the first time she growled, the first time she let Maria near without lunging. "Do you remember how broken you were?" Maria whispered. "Do you know how much you changed him?" Raya didn't move. Maria cried silently, for both of them. Jamie didn't return for a week. Not to the zoo. Not to Maria's calls. He wasn't at school either. He disappeared into the corners of the city the way stray animals do. Not hiding, just drifting. Maria worried. The zoo board didn't ask. Then, early one morning, just before dawn, Maria received a message. A photo. Jamie, sitting on the grass, inside Raya's enclosure. She ran. Not to security. Not to the board. Straight to the enclosure. He was there just as the photo showed. Curled beside the tiger, arms wrapped loosely around his knees, his face hidden in his hood. And Raya, pressed close to him, like a boulder of breath and fur, her chin resting across his shoes, tail curled behind her. Maria didn't yell. She didn't demand answers. She just stood at the edge of the wall and said softly, "I was hoping you'd come through the gate." Jamie looked up. "I didn't want anyone to know," he whispered. "Too late." He looked back down. "They're going to take her away, aren't they?" Maria froze. "What did you hear?" "There's a petition. I saw it online. People want her transferred to a sanctuary. Some want her put down." Maria's hands clenched. "None of that is decided. I'm still fighting." "They think she's dangerous," he said, "because she's quiet. She's dangerous because she survived." He nodded. "Like me." They sat in silence. The sky began to lighten. A faint breeze rolled through the enclosure, lifting dust and loose fur into the air.
Raya blinked slowly.
Then closed her eyes. 2 days later, the board called an emergency meeting. Someone had leaked the photo. It was everywhere now: headlines, debate panels, op-eds. Some people were furious. Others were moved to tears. The zoo received dozens of threats, and just as many donations. Lines were drawn. They had to act. Maria stood before them and said only one thing: "If you take them apart now, you're not protecting anyone. You're breaking both of them." But the decision was already made. Jamie was banned from entering the zoo. A restraining notice was filed. Not legal, not formal. Just a piece of paper from legal advisors to reduce risk. Raya's enclosure was closed to the public, and plans were quietly made to transfer her to a larger facility in another state. Maria found out through an email. No one told her to her face. She called Jamie. He didn't pick up. The night before the transfer, Maria unlocked the service gate one last time. She didn't bring food, or a clipboard, or anyone else, just herself. She sat down by the edge of the cave, and Raya walked to her. Slow, deliberate. She pressed her head into Maria's shoulder and stood there for a long, long time. Maria cried. She didn't try to stop her, didn't pretend to be strong. And when she finally whispered, "I'm sorry," Raya turned, stepped back into the shadows, and vanished from sight. The enclosure felt hollow without her. Even with the glass cleaned, the grass trimmed, and the signs polished, it was obvious something had been taken. The space didn't echo anymore. It just sat, still unfinished, like a book someone had closed too early. Visitors passed by without stopping. The plaque outside that once read, "Raya Bengal Tiger," had been removed. The gate was locked. The staff stopped speaking about her, as if saying her name might stir something too heavy to carry. But Maria kept coming. After hours, early mornings, she would sit on the bench near the wall, notebook in her lap, sometimes staring at the cave, sometimes writing, though half the time the pen didn't move. She didn't know what to do with herself. The zoo moved on. Schedules tightened. New exhibits opened. But nothing felt quite the same. Jamie hadn't spoken to her since that night. She left messages. No reply. She asked around school staff, neighbors, even the old man at the corner bodega where he sometimes bought pencils and cheap candy. No one had seen him. For weeks, it was like he had disappeared again. Then, one morning, a package arrived at Maria's doorstep. No return address. Inside, a folded map, a photograph, and Jamie's sketchbook. She opened it slowly, flipping through pages filled with quiet beauty. Raya sleeping, Raya stretching, Raya with eyes that held galaxies in them. On the last page, written in thick black ink, were 5 words: "She never left my side." The photo was grainy, clearly printed from an old file. It showed 2 tigers, caged, thin, wounded, huddled together in the corner of a transport trailer. One was unmistakably Raya. The other had a scar over his left eye, and a tag on his collar that read, R06. Maria had seen the photo before. It was in the old rescue files, buried deep in the archive, Raya and the male tiger she'd arrived with. The one listed as deceased in transit. But something in the image gnawed at her now. The tag, the scar, the date. She pulled the file, checked the logs. R06 was declared dead en route during a layover in Frankfurt. But there had never been a confirmed photo of the body. Just a missing tag, a notation of unresponsive, and a single line that had never stood out to her before. Animal redirected under Emergency Directive 14B due to medical instability. Redirected. Not buried. Not cremated. Not confirmed dead. Maria's heart skipped. She ran a search through the International Tracking Database for rescues under Directive 14B and found it. An archive transport record for R06, rerouted to a different sanctuary entirely. One that, according to the latest updates, was still active, and the same facility Raya had just been transferred to. Maria made the call immediately. The woman who answered didn't speak much English. But when Maria explained who she was and what she was looking for, the woman paused for a long time, then said, "I think you need to come see him." Maria didn't go alone. She brought Jamie. He didn't speak on the car ride. He sat with the map in his lap, sketchbook against his chest, fingers gripping the corners like they might disappear. When they arrived at the sanctuary, it was quiet.
No crowds. No birds.
Just trees, clean air, and animals that didn't pace. They were led to the far edge of the reserve where an enclosure backed up against thick forest. It was open, not barred, not caged, just protected. The woman gestured for them to wait, and then she called a name into the trees. "Rohan." Jamie blinked. "Rohan?" he echoed. The woman nodded. Maria turned slowly toward him. "That's your father's name." Jamie didn't respond, but his breath caught. And then, out of the forest, a tiger stepped. Not Raya, but older, larger, with a scar above his left eye, and a slow, careful gait. He walked directly to the fence, stopped just feet away from Jamie, and stood perfectly still. A low chuffing sound filled the space. Jamie's knees gave out. He dropped to the ground and cried for the first time in years. The records came later. Cross-checks confirmed it. The male tiger, misfiled, misrouted, had survived in isolation for nearly a decade before being relocated again under a generic identifier. No one had known he'd been part of the original pair. Until now. Maria stared at the papers, trying to reconcile how something so massive, so alive, had been lost by a clerical error. But Jamie didn't seem surprised. "She always knew," he said softly. "She waited for him. And for me." Maria placed a hand on his shoulder. "You think she brought you here?" "I don't think," he whispered. "I know. They stayed for hours. The sanctuary allowed it. No news crews.
No reporters.
Just a boy, a tiger, and the ghost of another who had never really left." Jamie drew again. Not from imagination this time. He drew Raya. But behind her, in the trees, he drew a shape. The outline of another tiger. And a child. Walking side by side. At the bottom of the page, he wrote, "Some goodbyes aren't endings. They're instructions." When Jamie returned to the city, it was quieter than he remembered. Not in sound, but in noise that didn't matter anymore. The angry voices, the headlines, the noise of people who hadn't been there, who hadn't seen what he had, who never sat in the grass beside a creature who saw straight through him. They didn't mean the same thing now. The world could shout. But Jamie had learned how to listen to something deeper. He didn't go back to school right away. He didn't visit the zoo either. Instead, he returned to the places where he used to hide. The alley behind the bodega, the roof above the laundromat, the path behind the park. And in each one, he left something small. A sketch, a note, a drawing of a tiger curled beside a boy. No name.
No caption.
Just the shape of a bond that had once saved them both. Maria saw one of the sketches on a bus stop poster 3 weeks later. Someone had taken it, scanned it, and printed it over the glass with the words, "Some things protect us in silence." Another appeared on a mural downtown. Raya's face painted across a brick wall in bold, soft lines. Beneath it, she listened. The city didn't forget. Jamie hadn't gone public, but the story had taken a life of its own. Not the sensational version. The real one. People had stopped talking about fear and started talking about trust. Kids began writing letters to the zoo, not demanding to see Raya, but thanking her. Thanking her for teaching them something they hadn't known how to name. Maria read every one of them. She saved them in a folder labeled Raya's Letters. She never reopened the enclosure. She left it empty. not as a display, but as a memorial. Grass overgrew. The cave darkened. The sign never went back up. But every morning, a fresh flower appeared near the gate. No one saw who left it. No one needed to. One morning, months later, Jamie visited Maria at her office. He was taller, a little stronger, but still quiet. He handed her a folder. Inside was a project proposal, a partnership between the sanctuary and the city zoo, a remote art program where children would be paired with specific animals, most never face-to-face, but still connected through stories, drawing, writing, and care. The goal wasn't to tame or train. It was to see. Every animal, he said softly, should be remembered for more than what people feared about them. Maria blinked away the wetness in her eyes. She nodded. "I'll help you build it," she said. They named the program Silent Bonds. The first session paired a girl named Lily, age 8, with an old leopard who had never warmed to people. Lily drew every day, pictures of trees, stars, dreams. After a month, the leopard began sleeping near the glass whenever Lily's letters were taped to the wall. The second session matched a boy named Elias with a crow that had been rescued after losing a wing. The boy had never spoken a full sentence in class, but his first letter said, "You fly in your way, I'll walk in mine." It grew from there. Jamie never asked for credit. He just kept showing up, helping, listening, watching for signs. One winter morning, Maria received a package from the sanctuary. No letter, just a photo.
Raya.
Lying beside Rohan in the grass, their bodies curved like a mirrored wave, tails touching. At their feet, scratched into the dirt in crude, curved claw marks, was a half-circle.
Ein unintentional Symbol.
A shared mark. Maria framed the photo and placed it in the old keeper's hallway, above the bench Jamie used to wait on. She didn't add a caption. She didn't need to. On the one-year anniversary of Raya's transfer, Jamie visited the graveyard for rescued zoo animals, the one most visitors never saw, hidden beneath the old oak grove. There was a stone there now, freshly placed, with a name carved carefully by hand.
Raya.
She waited. She watched. She gave us back to ourselves. Jamie stood beside it for a long time, sketchbook tucked under one arm, hands in his coat pockets. The wind moved through the trees. Not loud, just steady, like breath. He opened his sketchbook and flipped to the last page. He hadn't touched it in weeks. He took out a pencil and began to draw. This time he drew a forest, not wild, not threatening. Just endless trees, stretching out to a quiet horizon. In the center, a tiger walked, and beside her, a boy.
No list. No caje.
Just motion. And just behind them, in soft charcoal lines, the faint outline of another pair, Rohan and a younger version of himself. Shadow and memory walking alongside something still very real. Beneath it, he wrote, "Some love doesn't leave. It leads." He tore the page from the book, folded it, and left it under a stone beside the marker, then turned and walked back into the world.